Hi everyone, good evening. Please allow a few minutes for the other participants to join in the webinar tonight, and we'll start in a few minutes. Right. Okay. So, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. And yes, it's a rainy evening tonight. All right. So, welcome to our webinar titled Australian Permanent Residency Through Employer Sponsored Programs, Subclass 482 and 186. We are delighted to have you here, and we truly appreciate you taking the time to be part of this session. Today's webinar will be presented by Desmond Ang, our licensed migration advisor and the managing director of Global Migration Solutions. Desmond brings years of experience in Australian migration and will be guiding you through the pathways available under the employer-sponsored visa programs. If you have any questions along the way, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A box. We will do our best to answer as many as we can during the session. And if time doesn't allow us to get all of them, rest assured we'll follow up with you after the webinar. Once again, thank you for being here. We hope you find this session informative and valuable as you consider your journey to Australia. So Desmond, please start your webinar.
Thanks, Ashmita. Hi, everyone. I wish you well and thanks for joining us. So my name is Desmond Ang, and I will be walking you through today's session on the Australia 482 and 186 employer-sponsored visa. Whether you are an employer looking to bring in overseas talent, or someone thinking about working in Australia, or just curious about how this visa pathway works, you are here at the right place. And we are going to break things down in a simple, practical way, covering what the 482 and 186 visa are all about, and who is eligible, what the process looks like, and how you can make the most of this option. Let's start with the subclass 482 Skill in Demand visa. Under this 482 visa, applicants needs a job offer from an approved employer, either locally or from the overseas company. The employer must nominate them under a standard business sponsorship or a labor agreement. They must prove there is a genuine need and that they have tried to hire Australian first. Under this visa, there's no age limit for the applicants. Let's have a look at how a company can become an approved employer the approved Australian employer. So in general, to sponsor worker, a business must meet these three criteria. First, it must be a legally operating entity, actively operating, registered, and compliant, whether in Australia or overseas. Second, there must be no adverse history, no serious breach of workplace law, insolvency issue, or sanctions unless there is a valid explanation. Third, the business needs to show financial capacity. It must be able to meet the sponsorship obligation, especially paying the sponsor workers properly. To nominate a workers under the 482 visa, the employer must meet several key conditions. And this is generally happening right after the company is being qualified as a standard business sponsored. So this is often the time referred as the second stage of the visa process. So to nominate a workers, there are several aspects and criteria to be fulfilled. First, the role must be an eligible occupation, either listed on the skilled occupation list or covered by a labor agreement. Second, it must be a genuine position that fits the business operation and not just created to secure a visa. For example, if it is a restaurant and it doesn't make sense to nominate an engineer. So when the immigration process the nomination application, they will take into consideration whether or not this position is genuine and it makes sense and it is required by the business. Third, the employer must complete labor market testing, showing real efforts to hire the Australians unless exempt. Fourth, salary must meet the TSMIT. Currently, the minimum salary required for this 482 visa is 73,150 per annum, which align with the market rates. Fifth, the company must pay the SAF levy, and this is a training levy that imposed to each company that is nominating an overseas workers. And the cost would be 1,200 per year for a small business. And here the small business is referring to the company with an annual or yearly turnover of below 10 million. And it will cost 1,008 per year for company with an yearly turnover of above 10 million. And finally, they must clearly state the job location and provide a signed employment contract. And this is an overview of what does it take, to secure, a nomination application successfully. Right, let's have a look at what are the options, what are the three streams under this 482 visa. We have the core skill stream, option number 1. We also have the specialist skill stream as option number 2. We also have labor agreement stream. So the first process, again, is to get the company qualified as a standard business sponsor. Once a company has completed the first step, then the company would nominate a position. And once the nomination is completed, then you have to decide, the company have to decide if you, as an applicant, is going to apply under the core skill stream or the specialist skill stream or the labor agreement stream. Let's have a look at what are the differences between the three. Now, under the core skill streams, these streams targets the skills workers in occupation listed on the core skill occupational list. And under the list, this consists of more than 400 occupation. So last December, the list has extended to cover up to 400 over occupation. Now, to be eligible, the applicant must have a job in one of the three listed occupations with at least 1 year of relevant experience in the last 5 years. They also need to meet the English requirements, typically an IELTS score of 5 or equivalent. The salary for this role must be a minimum of 73,150 per annum, and the figure is an index annually to keep the pace with the market. Under this stream, it offers a pathway to permanent residency through the employer nomination scheme, the subclass 186, which we are going to talk about it later. Now, let's have a look at the second stream, which is the specialist skill stream. Under this stream, the stream is designed for the top tier talent and highly skilled professional who are already earning a strong income set at 135,000 or more. So if you're going to apply for this stream, do make sure the salary offered is above 135,000 per annum. It focuses on occupation in the higher level under the ENSCO group, which include managers, professionals, and some technicals and sales roles. Candidates needs at least 1 year of relevant experience from the last 5 years in order to be able to apply for this visa or this stream. And basic English proficiency that is equivalent to IELTS score of 5 or equivalents. Importantly, this pathway isn't just about temporary work, it also opened the door to permanent residency through the employer nomination scheme, Subclass 186, after holding the visa for 2 years. Let's have a look at the labor agreement stream. It is for workers who are nominated under the labor agreement with an employer. This stream applies when an employer has a specific agreement in place with the government to sponsor the foreign workers. To qualify, the occupation must be included in the labor agreement, and candidates typically need at least 1 year of relevant work experience, again, over the last 5 years, unless the agreement specifies otherwise. The English language requirement will vary based on the terms of the agreement, as with other streams, as this pathway do provide the transition to the permanent residency. But it depends on the specific condition laid out in the labor agreement. So this covers the 3 different streams of the 482. Let's have a look at the work experience requirement. When it comes to the work experience, the applicants generally need at least 1 year of relevant experience in their nominated occupation. And this must be within the last 5 years. This 1 year of experience was reduced from previously 2 years of experience required under the old 482 visa. Importantly, if you are working under the part-time basis, the experience may still count as long as it is equivalent to the full-time work, which is counted as 20 hours, 20 working hours per week. And that is considered as the full-time experience. Now, after the time, under the 482, some of you may have heard about our LMT, which stands for Labor Market Testing. When it comes to the LMT, the employer must show they have tried to hire the Australian worker first. And how does the Australian government demonstrate that? That means advertising the position on at least 2 approved platforms is required, such as national job sites like seek.com or Indeed, or industrial-specific website, or even major newspaper. Professional recruitment agency or Workforce Australia are also an option. The ads must be placed within 4 months of submitting the nomination, and they need to stay live for at least 4 weeks. So when the company places an ad, do make sure when the application is being submitted, the ad is placed within the last 4 months. Otherwise, it would be considered as not current efforts to look for the Australian workforce. These are some exemptions, like for countries, there are some exemptions, like for countries with trade agreement, such as US and Australia, UK and Australia, Singapore, and Malaysia does have a trade agreement as well. So in other words, if the company is sponsoring the Malaysian passport holder, the labor market testing is being exempted. And also, exemption covers senior executive or managers with a high salary. And we are referring to when we talk about high salary, this is referring to a position with a yearly salary of above 135,000 per annum. Let's have a look at salary requirement. Starting from 1st of July 2025, the minimum salary threshold will be increased for core skill. Yeah, it will be increased from 73,150 to 76,515. For the specialist skill, it will be increased from 135,000 to 141,210. Yeah, so for those who who is not lodging the application in time before 1st of July, do take note the salary will be increased from 1st of July. Talking about skill assessment, not all applicants would require a skill assessment under the 482, but it is mandatory for certain situations, such as if you're from specific countries or if your occupation is on the mandatory skill assessment list. So do take notes, it is compulsory for trades, most of the trades occupation, like electricians or plumber, as well as the health and education role. However, there are exemptions if you have relevant Australian qualification or extensive work experience, especially if you are currently working in Australia, and assessment may not be needed. English requirements, do take notes. English is one of the mandatory requirements. So for the core skill and the specialist skill stream, the applicant must meet one of the following English language, such as IELTS, which is the most common one. The required result would be overall band 5 with at least 5 in each components that cover speaking, listening, writing, and reading. Also, you may consider PTE academic with an overall score of 36 with at least 36 in each components. So these will be the two most common English option. Of course, you have TOEFL, you have OET, you have also Cambridge C1 Advanced. For the labor agreement stream, the requirement for English are generally similar unless the agreement specifies different criteria. Now, talking about the application process, do take notes. The steps number 1, just to summarize what we have gone through earlier, the employer applies to become a standard business sponsored. Once this process is completed, then the employer move on to lodge the nomination application. Again, the step number 3, which is for the workers to lodge the visa application. After step 1 and step 2 are being completed, do take notes, all steps must be approved in order for a 482 visa to be granted. Now, there are some important notes under 482. Do take notes, this visa has a duration of up to 4 years, depending on the stream. If you are a Hong Kong passport holder, your 482 visa could be granted up to 5 years. And all the 482 visa gives you a pathway for the permanent residency via the subclass 186. And do take notes, 482 has a stringent visa condition, such as you must be employed by the nominated employer. If you are being absent from work for more than 60 days, for example, your employer will need to update the immigration. And if you quit the job and there is no new company taking over the nomination, this 482 visa could be terminated. And that gives a overview of what the 482 visa looks like. And I hope that gives you, a good understanding on the basic requirements of the 482 and what are how the process look like. Now, let's look at another popular employer nomination visa, which is a subclass 186. This is equally as important and popular as 482. And I will share with you what are the differences compared to as versus 482. Now, here's a sharp and straightforward notes for 186. The subclass 186 visa is a permanent residence visa designed for skilled workers. To apply, the workers must be nominated by an employer, just like 482. Once granted, this visa allow you to live, work in Australia indefinitely instead of 4 years under the 482. In general, the applicants must be under 45 years old, although some exemption do applies. Do take notes, under the 482, there isn't any age limit, such as 45, that applies under the 186. Now, there are a few different types of the 482 or different stream of 482. Let's have a look at the first stream, which is the temporary residence transition stream. It is for workers who has held the subclass 482 visa that we have just spoke a while back. So to qualify, the applicant must have worked full-time for the sponsoring employer for at least 2 years. The employer must then lodge a valid nomination for a permanent position in the same or closely related occupation. So, if you are being sponsored or being nominated previously under as an accountant under the 482, you are expected to be nominated again under the same position or closely related position for the 186. And you can't move, or you are not changing, your skill or your position or your occupation from an accountant, as an example, to, for example, human resource. Yeah. Applicants must be under 45, as I mentioned earlier, though there is age exemption if the workers is earning 175,000 or more per year under the visa 482. Yeah. So do take notes. If you applied for the 482 while you're above 45, do make sure, if you're considering or planning ahead for the 186, in other words, do make sure you are being paid for at least 175,000 for at least 24 months during the 482 visa periods. Now let's have a look at direct entry stream. So this is for those who apply directly under 186 without having to go through the 482. Again, you must be under 45 and you have to have your occupation on the skill list, and you have to hold the right qualification for the role. You must also need a nomination from an eligible Australian employer offering you a permanent position. And one important piece is the English. You must show a competent English, which is generally higher as compared to 482. So under 186, the English required is band 6 in each components. There's also a labor agreement stream under 186. It is tailored options for employer who have a formal agreement with the employer governments to fill, with the Australian government to fill the specific skill shortages. This agreement allowed the employer to sponsor overseas workers in the role that may not be on the standard skill occupation list. To qualify, you must be nominated for a permanent position role clearly outlined in the agreement. So under the labor agreement, right, the company would have entered into an agreement with the Australian government, and in that agreement, it was specified what are the occupation or position that has been approved. And with that agreement, then the company can proceed to sponsor or to nominate you. Do take notes. The skill, the qualification, the English are mandatory. So the age limit, again, it generally is below 45, but as always, there might be exemption built into the specific agreement. Now, under the employer, for employer, first of all, under the 186, the immigration will still assess you as an approved sponsor, though there isn't, a three steps process that 482 visa need to go through. So under the employer sponsored of 186, there are only two steps. However, the immigration would still be assessing, the company as in legally operating, actively operating, generally the same approved standard business sponsor criteria applies under the 186. And also, this position has to be full-time, and this offer has to be offered for a minimum of 24 months. And the company need to make sure the employment terms and conditions are being paid, or rather this employer is being paid at the standard market rate, with the fair employment terms and condition, and how the immigrations assess that, they will refer to the offer letter, or rather the employment contract that you are offering to the candidates. Now let's talk about the nomination requirements for 186. When nominating a workers for the subclass 186 visa, the employer must meet certain criteria. First of all, the business must be genuinely operating and legally compliant. The role offer must be a real ongoing position, and this fit within the normal scope of the business. It can't just be created to support a visa application. So if you were to look at the whole entire visa application, this nomination process is the most crucial, is the most complex process, because it is up to how you justify if this position is genuine and this position is ongoing for at least 24 months, and the immigration need to be satisfied. Otherwise, this nomination would not be successful, right? Yeah. So the employee are also expected to prove that they have made a genuine offer or efforts to hire a local Australian. The same condition applies as 482, that we spoke earlier, unless there is an exemption, So again, we will talk about the exemption. For example, if you are passport holder of Malaysia, you're passport holder of Singapore, US, Vietnam, for example, who has a trade agreement with Australia, and this labor market testing is being exempted. And the company who is nominating you under the 186 is required to also pay the Skilling Australian Fund, in short SIF levy. This is a one-time off payment of 3,000 if the company has a turnover of less than 10 million, or 15,000, or sorry, 5,000, if it is for a company with a annual turnover of above 10 million. Finally, the nomination must be for a permanent full-time role, and one that matches the employed applicant's skill and experience. Next, let's have a look at the work experience required and the skill assessment requirements under the 186. So for the temporary residence transition stream, the applicant must have worked at least 2 years full-time while holding the 482 visa. In contrast, the direct entry stream require at least 3 years of relevant experience in the nominated occupation, and a positive skill assessment is mandatory to prove that you are suitable for the role. For the temporary residence transition stream, the fact that you have been working for at least 2 years under the 482, there isn't a skill assessment required, when you are applying for the 186. So while both streams require experience, the direct entry routes added the extra layer of formal skill recognitions, which is the skill assessment. Now, talking about the labor market testing, basically the same rules apply. as 482 visa. Just to highlight, again, the advertisement has to be advertised for at least 4 weeks, and that advertisement has to be made within the last 4 months. Yeah, exemption is given, yeah, if you are a passport holder of certain countries, and that saves the efforts of having to put up the advertisements by the employer. English requirement, we spoke about it briefly. It is generally higher when it comes to 186 visa. Yeah, it is band 6 if it is IL, or it is 50 in each components or above if it is a PT academic. Yeah. Application process. Yeah, so first of all, the employer would need to lodge the nomination, and the workers would then lodge the visa application. Right, the departments will assess both the application. They will first of all assess the nomination to determine if the position is genuine, ongoing and is required for at least more than 2 years before they proceed to assess the visa applicants. Then the permanent residency will be granted upon the approval. So for 186, this is a pathway for direct PR. For 482, it is a temporary residence of up to a maximum of 4 years or 5 years if you are a Hong Kong passport holder. Now, the benefits in terms of the 186, this, as mentioned again, as I mentioned earlier, again, this is a permanent residency. It provides a permanent residency status, which means you and your family members would have the access to the Medicare from the day one, and all others welfare, all other benefits such as education benefits, such as benefits from the Centrelink, and this is a pathway, and that gives you a pathway to the Australian citizenship after 4 years of being a resident in Australia. Now, there are some common challenges and how to overcome. This is just some piece of my advice. So I guess the prerequisite requirement is to find, a sponsor in Australia. So that means finding a job offer, and how do you go about it? Yeah. So my suggestion is, unless you are being or currently being employed by, an international or multinational company where there is an opportunity for you to be transferred to Australia. Otherwise, you may consider contacting some of the recruitment agency and do write in, do reach out to them to confirm if they are supporting, some of the employer, on the on finding the suitable candidates. When I mention when I mention they are supporting, doesn't mean that, this recruitment agency is applying for you that visa 482 or 186, but rather they are facilitating, and looking for the right and suitable candidates, yeah, for the Australian employer. And here are a few of the recruitment agency who is specialized in certain profession or certain occupation, and do make contacts, and there are a lot more other than those that are being listed here. Okay. Do take notes. Yeah, so other than this, I guess there are also few challenges that you wanted to overcome, such as, for example, don't miss out. Yeah, sorry. So taking a step back, finding a sponsor in Australia, don't forget, you can also be sponsored by a overseas sponsor. And this overseas sponsor is basically referring to company based outside Australia who is not operating yet in Australia or have not set up a company in Australia yet. And how do you get sponsored by an overseas company? For example, if you are currently already working with a Malaysia company or any company based outside Australia, and they are already having or conducting a business, with the Australian company, or they are already providing products or services to an Australian company, and they have a future plan to set up a company in Australia, right? Or the company, overseas company, has entered into a venture agreement, or they have a expansion plan or intend to set up a company in Australia. And this overseas company might be qualified as a standard business sponsor. And with that, they would be able to sponsor you for a visa 482. All right. So don't miss out this. Perhaps this could be an opportunity, yeah, to be sponsored by an overseas sponsored, which is literally a company based outside Australia. And this must not be, it may not be an Australian company though. Yeah, it could be a company in Singapore, it could be a company in Malaysia or anywhere, right? Another piece of advice, do check out whether or not your occupation will require a skill assessment. If a skill assessment is required and not to delay the process, you may consider talking to a lawyer or licensed immigration advisor, and get an advice without having a delay, on the process. Yeah, so these are the few advice that I would suggest, yeah, that you take into consideration. Yeah. So that kind of summarize the 186 visa that I wanted to share with you. Yeah. Next, allow me to just give a quick introduction about our company. Yeah. So GMS stands for Global Migration Solutions. We are licensed, Australian government licensed company. Yeah. And we have been in the operation or in the business since 2004. And this year is our 21 years of business. Now, the programs that we are offering other than Australia and New Zealand, we do also extend our services to cover the investment program, which is the EB5 program for United States, as well as the Portugal programs, commonly known for GV, yeah, or Golden Visa, for those who is looking at obtaining a European citizenship. This program is actually very interesting, relatively much lower in investment, which is 500,000 of a euro, with very low residency, literally 35 days over 5 years. And after filing the application on the year 6, you'll be eligible to apply, for a citizenship and became, a EU citizen. Just a little bit of milestone to share with you. Over the last 21 years, yeah, we have helped more than 13,000 clients successfully securing their PR. Yeah. And we are known by our high successful records. Yeah. So other than myself, just a little bit of just to introduce James Allen Hall and Audrey Anthony. And these three of us are the main pillar of the company. Three of us who are licensed to provide the immigration advice. The staff do not provide the immigrations advice. And we make sure one of us is there available to give you the right advice and guide you properly from day one. So James, who is being in this industry for more than 22 years, he is also a trainer for migration lawyer and migration agent. He's based in our Singapore office. Myself, I'm in this industry for 21 years by now. Yeah, before that, I was trained as a chartered accountant, worked for the Pricewaterhouse in Singapore and Sydney. And Audrey Anthony, who is with us for 15 years now. Yeah, and she specialized in general skill migration programs. And do make sure you are always being advised by a licensed advisor. Yeah, and you can find out our registrations from the Department of the Home Affairs. And other than being in Australia, Singapore, and Malaysia, we have also set up our presence in Vietnam, Cambodia, and Hong Kong, and to provide the services for clients in this region. We constantly stay updates with the latest news through some of the media platforms. Do subscribe to these media platforms to get the latest updates. Yeah, if you may scan the barcode, and you'll be able to get all the latest news and information from us. Now, this is how you may contact us. You can write to us through enquiry@globalmigrationsolutions.com, or you can reach out to us via the phone or the WhatsApp under this number. Well, I guess this is a bit of the, this section is quite lengthy, and I hope that it covers and it addresses all the questions that you may have in relation to the 482 and 186 visa. If there are questions that we didn't get a chance to address from these slides, we will pick up the question from the chat box, and we'll make sure our office will reach out to you. We'll either email you or call you up with the answer to your question. Yeah, and I understand this is after work, and we wouldn't want to hold you back too long. And I hope you have a pleasant evening. And again, thank you for joining us. And I hope that you get all the information and find this informative and helpful. Yeah, and see you again soon. And please, again, do not hesitate to reach out to us if you have any question. Yeah, anytime. All right, goodbye. Take care.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Please send your questions to the email in the screen. All right. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.